This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. As Russian President Vladimir Putin is wrapping up his trip to North Korea, meeting with Kim Jong-un, they're pledging to strengthen their ties. They've signed a new security agreement promising to help each other if either is attacked.
The leaders of Russia and North Korea have signed a new security agreement promising to come to each other's aid if they are ever attacked. Now, the details of this agreement are still unclear. They're calling it a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement. They said they're aiming to strengthen their military and economic cooperation. This comes amid Western sanctions on the two countries. The deal is drawing international attention. The U.S. and its allies are concerned over weapons and ammunition that North Korea provides to Russia in exchange for economic assistance. Russia's economy and military are mostly reliant on the Chinese Communist Party, and this was reiterated on Tuesday by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
Putin's visits to North Korea demonstrates and confirms the very close alignment between Russia and authoritarian states like North Korea, but also China and Iran.
If China in particular, which professes to have a strong interest in ending the war, if it really means it, it will stop fueling the war machine, and we'll continue to do everything we can to cut off the support that countries like Iran and North Korea are providing.
This marks Putin's first visit to North Korea in 24 years. After North Korea, Putin's visiting Vietnam's capital, meeting with its leaders. As Russia is facing growing international isolation, it's seeking the assistance of other authoritarian countries. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Over to the conflicts in the Middle East, a bipartisan delegation of lawmakers is in Israel today. This comes as tensions at the Israel-Lebanon border keep rising, with Hezbollah making more threats against Israel. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the Israel update.
Lawmakers from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee are in the Middle East on Wednesday. Israeli President Isaac Herzog told them it's crucial that the U.S. and Israel maintain strong ties. Watch.
That we are fighting here the battle of the free world against the empire of evil. That's what we're doing. And today...
The visit comes as a high-level meeting between Israel and the U.S. has reportedly been cancelled. That's according to Axios and CNN, citing two U.S. officials. This comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this on Tuesday.
The administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel.
The reports say an envoy for President Biden later told Netanyahu that the accusations are inaccurate and out of line. On Wednesday, the Israeli government gave this update.
Ammunition and weapons that the Prime Minister referred to are in the process of being delivered to Israel.
This comes as tensions at the Israel-Lebanon border keep rising. Hezbollah says Israeli strikes killed 4 of its fighters on Wednesday. Israel, meanwhile, says the Iran-backed group fired 15 rockets from southern Lebanon towards a city in northern Israel. Most of that city has now been abandoned.
Living right now in Kiryat Shmona is very sad. The city is empty most of the time.
The head of Hezbollah said no place in Israel will be safe from attacks if a bigger conflict breaks out. He also threatened other countries in the Mediterranean. In response, Israel is already strengthening its military readiness in the north, saying they're getting ready for any possibility.
We have an obligation to change the situation in the north and return the citizens safely to their homes.
And lastly, the United Nations Human Rights Office says Israel may have violated the laws of war by failing to distinguish between civilians and fighters in Gaza.
Unlawful targeting, when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack against a civilian population, may also implicate the commission of crimes against humanity.
The UN office came to that conclusion by assessing 6 Israeli attacks that caused a high number of casualties. Israel called the analysis flawed. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
Tropical storm Alberto is now the first named storm of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. The National Hurricane Center reported that Alberto is now producing 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds as it makes its way towards Mexico's eastern Gulf Coast. The storm is about 300 miles south of Brownsville, Texas. It's already generating bursts of heavy rain and storm surge along the coast. Experts are predicting an intense hurricane season, largely due to the warmest ocean surface temperatures on record. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts between 8 to 13 hurricanes this year. Of those, 4 to 7 could hit major hurricane status, which is Category 3 or higher. At least one person has died from the New Mexico wildfire, according to the governor's office. It reported that 2 people were injured and treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities say there is still 0% containment. NTD's David Lamb has the updates.
Thousands of people have fled a mountain village in New Mexico due to 2 wildfires this week. As of Wednesday, the fires covered more than 23,000 acres, damaged around 1,400 structures, and left at least 1 person dead.
We have been through several fires in the 19 years we've been there, and none of them was fierce like this one.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham declared a state of emergency covering Lincoln County, where the village of Ruidoso is, and the Mescalero Apache Reservation. The 2 fast-moving fires converged together near the southern part of the state. The evacuation orders came so quickly on Monday night that residents had to leave their homes immediately.
I hope it's still there, but those the fires have still been working through. I don't know whether we're going to have a home. There are several people in that area just above us that lost their home.
The emergency declaration frees up funding and resources to manage the crisis. Today, response crews were able to directly engage areas of the fire's footprint when conditions allowed. Some rain was expected going forward this week in New Mexico.
Our house is fine. We got lucky that way. I thought it would be with the prevailing winds the way they were. So I wasn't overly stressed out about it. Some of the people around me were, but that's all right. We handled it well enough, and we're glad to get to Roswell and glad to find the people here that we did.
Nationwide, wildfires have burned more than 3,000 square miles this year. That's higher than the 10-year averages, according to the National Interagency Fire Center. About 20 wildfires currently burning are considered large and uncontained, including those in California and Washington. David Lamb, NTD News.
No cooler weather yet as the heat wave sweeping across America's East Coast pushes New York City's temperature close to triple digits. NTD's Fiona G was in Central Park to find out what New Yorkers are doing to keep cool.
Temperatures are still soaring here in the city, but young New Yorkers don't seem to be fazed. Families are taking advantage of Central Park's splash pad to keep cool.
We are getting wet. Well, we're not, but our child is.
Essentially, most of the time, try to find water spots anywhere that my kids can come in and play.
The water to keep them cool. It's a beautiful New York day. Definitely a heat wave, so this is the perfect place to come, cool down, have fun, and then run their energy out. And when they go home, they are asleep.
What's your favorite thing about the summer?
Playing with water and going to the park.
Do you like summer more than winter?
Yeah, but it's a little too hot.
New York City has specialized websites that help New Yorkers find cool-off stations in their local areas. Meanwhile, New York Governor Kathy Hochul says that state park admission will be free on Wednesday and Thursday so that people can visit and cool down. Have you used those websites at all?
I did, actually. So my friend, she sent me, and it's good because it shows you a little bit of a history of the park. It shows you some pictures so you can see what you're getting yourself into, and then it also shows the directions so you know where to go. So I think that's great.
Do you think you'll visit a state park?
Most likely, yeah. That sounds great.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, why not?
I'm off of work. It's summertime. It's a great way to get out, of course. I want to kind of get them upstate a little bit, so with a lot of hiking parks and waterfalls, definitely.
Spray showers like the one here in Central Park will continue to stay open as long as temperatures stay above 80 degrees. And with the heat expected to continue to rise until at least Friday, it's important to remember, stay cool, stay hydrated, and stay safe, New York City. Fiona G, NTD News.
Last night's primary in Virginia's 5th district kept voters in suspense. While one candidate claims victory, another insists there's more to unfold. NTD's Melina Weisskopf takes a closer look at the congressional race that's illuminating some unexpected turbulence within the Republican Party.
Results are still too close to call in a race that's now on hold for the federal holiday. Incumbent and chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Bob Good, currently has just over 31,000 votes, trailing behind his challenger, a former Navy SEAL, John McGuire, who's leading by just 321 votes. And McGuire is feeling bold. He's already claimed his victory. Listen to this.
Hey everyone, listen, I know it's a late night, but I am so happy. There's probably 1,000 things I want to say, but I would say this: now's the time for us to lock our arms. And if you voted for me, I'm super happy, and I'm going to earn that vote every day. And if you did not vote for me, I'm going to work every day to earn your vote. And so I hope we will all put our differences aside.
But just 97.8% of votes are counted, and Congressman Bob Good is optimistic, writing, "We believe we can still prevail." It's the most heavily funded race in Virginia, with many of the Republican Party's biggest players also invested for personal reasons mainly. For example, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy targeted Good after he voted to oust the Speaker last year, and former President Donald Trump has repeatedly attacked Good for initially supporting his opponent, Governor Ron DeSantis, in the presidential race. And many Republicans are split on this race. Even staunch Trump supporters broke ranks to support Good, while others, like Congressman Warren Davidson, want to see him go. If Good is booted from Congress, it would be the shortest tenure yet of any House Freedom Caucus chairman. We'll know how this story ends on Thursday when the vote counting is finished. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
With the Republican National Convention just around the corner, former President Trump is slated to pick his running mate during the convention. NTD's Sam Wong took to the National Mall to find out which candidate might be most popular or perhaps unpopular with voters.
So among Trump's choices for vice president, who do you think is the best option?
Tim Scott is definitely a good choice because he has got an exceptionally good political background from a state that has been successful under his reign.
I love Donald. I think he'd be fantastic.
The governor from Florida.
I know whoever he picks for vice president is going to be the perfect person.
One thing I know is it's not going to be Nikki Haley.
I would say J.D. Vance right now, coming from that working class like I did, so I kind of assimilate with him a little bit.
I think Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a younger generation, he's energetic, super intelligent.
I think any competent human being that can make up for his bad, disastrous choices.
Which one of these candidates would you least want to see Trump pick?
Scott out of South Carolina, man. Go watch his CNN interview when they was talking about the bump stocks. He didn't even want to answer it.
Tom Cotton is probably the worst of those people. Every time I've heard him speak, I stand on the complete opposite end of everything he says.
All of them trash. And it's not about me not liking them. It's about me not liking the system that they correspond with.
The Republicans are for corporate. Democrats are for corporate. I mean, at this point, you don't know who to choose.
All of the people that I've seen, from Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, there was a whole big list of them. All of them, any of them would be great.
The Sinaloa drug cartel and Chinese crime groups, the Department of Justice says they are working together to profit from sending drugs into America. Here's the story.
According to a federal indictment, the Sinaloa drug cartel has been working with Chinese crime groups to launder over $50 million in illegal drug profits.
Millions and millions of dollars are moved in proceeds from the drug sales in the United States back down to Mexico. And wealthy Chinese nationals in this country are given access to virtually limitless supplies of cash.
Officials from the Drug Enforcement Administration say the Sinaloa cartel is a ruthless, violent, global criminal enterprise that's responsible for America's fentanyl crisis. The officials say they do it for one reason: money. Money that has to be cleaned before cartel leaders can spend it. How prosecutors say the scheme works: wealthy Chinese people contact brokers in the U.S. asking to buy U.S. dollars. The broker tells them to put Chinese currency into a Chinese bank account. Then the broker gives them an equivalent amount of U.S. currency in the U.S. The currency is frequently hard cash from drug profits. Here, nearly $230,000 was found in a white paper bag in the trunk of a car. Here, nearly 600,000 was found in the form of strung-together $100 bills. Here, nearly 400,000 was found in a plastic bag. Back in China, the Chinese currency is then used to buy drug ingredients, which are shipped to Mexico.
China is the one that actually produces, and actually I should say, provides the chemicals and precursors for the cartels to make these counterfeit pills that are hitting the streets and our campuses throughout our country.
Retired Homeland Security agent Victor Avila says there are also many Chinese nationals in Mexico helping them create the drugs. He says the Sinaloa cartel is very violent and very successful.
They have no regard for human life whatsoever. And by the way, they're no longer just drug trafficking organizations. They have moved into the trafficking and smuggling of human beings and many other aspects, the oil, the lime trade, the avocado trade, and many other industries.
U.S. officials have charged 24 suspects, 11 of whom have Chinese names. Prosecutors say key suspects Edgar Martinez-Reyes and Peiji Tong would work with the cartel to obtain laundering contracts. This photo shows them entering the U.S. in January 2021. Martinez-Reyes' lawyer did not respond to requests for comment.
A cargo ship is believed to have sunk in the Red Sea after being attacked by Houthi terrorists. Earlier, we spoke with Justin Logan, Director of Defense and Foreign Policy Studies at Cato Institute, about the U.S. approach to the Houthi attacks. Justin Logan, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, to begin, reports note of escalation in the Red Sea by the Houthis. This is after a bulk ship carrier sank, along with reports of a remainder on board being killed. Now, this does come after weekend attacks on 2 ships as well as an American destroyer. How do you read these latest moves, especially when it comes to war in the region and fears of this escalation?
Well, I think the administration's Middle East policy has really gone from bad to worse. I mean, they infamously said that before the 10/7 attacks, the Middle East hadn't been as quiet as it was then in decades. Then the 10/7 attacks happened. We built this magical mystery pier, which is now disintegrated off the coast of Israel. And then there's this months-long war with the Houthis, which was just revealed both that we've spent over $1 billion fighting them, and that they are making progress. As you mentioned, they have sunk a second vessel, potentially killed 1 Filipino mariner. So this thing has really gone from bad to worse. And anybody who's had their hands on this Middle East policy should really hide their head in a bag, because it's been just an absolute disgrace from pillar to post.
Expanding on the Houthis' part, reports note that the Navy faces its most intense maritime fighting since World War II, with near daily attacks targeting commercial vessels as well as warships. How have the Houthis tied down the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea?
Well, it's really strategic malpractice on the part of the United States. The Houthis are doing what they've been doing for years and indeed decades, which is what military people refer to as shoot and scoot, right? You have very light munitions, you're very mobile, and the minute you launch, you get out of there. And so there are limited ability to retaliate. Moreover, the technologies that the United States are using are many orders of magnitude more expensive than what the Houthis are using. If you look at the cost that we spend to shoot down 1 Houthi missile, which is not particularly accurate, you're talking about in the neighborhood of $1 million to destroy 2,000 or 5,000 at most dollars worth of technology. This is a bad deal for the United States. And that's how you tally up $1 billion of expenditures over just about 6 months with very little to show for it in terms of military or political developments.
Expanding on that, the Cato Institute, where you're based, has a piece out titled "The U.S. Military Role in the Red Sea, Now Turning Offensive is a Bad Deal," noting that the U.S.-led coalition Operation Prosperity Guardian has cost the U.S. too much. Given that, what should be the U.S. strategy in the Red Sea going forward?
Well, I think we got roped into this by telling ourselves a story about freedom of navigation, which sounds like a really good principle to defend, right? We want commercial ships to be able to go anywhere they want with impunity. However, that's not the way the international economy works. So if you look at what's transpired, the ship traffic going through the Red Sea has gone way down, and there's a significant rerouting of maritime traffic from the Middle East around the Cape of Good Hope. Almost all of this carriage is going to Europe. Almost all of the trade is going to Europe, not to the United States. So it's not the case that we sort of run a maritime convoy with every trade shipment that goes around the world. And that does increase the costs at the margins for European consumers of these goods that have to pay more mariners and have to burn more fuel to reroute away from the Red Sea. But I think before you get into a shooting war with the Houthis, you want to have a story that you can tell yourself about what cost it would be worth paying and what that likely cost would be to make a dent in the Houthis' ability to launch these attacks, which, while terrifying, are not that consequential. I mean, they've been at this for the better part of 6 months, and they just sank their second vessel. And even so, there's still some commerce going through the Red Sea. So I think we're, have been in for a penny, but should not be in for a pound on this thing.
Now, many are noting when it comes to the Houthis or even Hamas in the war in Gaza that they're getting backing from Iran. And now there are concerning reports that Iran is close to weapons-grade uranium in terms of a potential nuclear war. Given all of that, how should the U.S. deter Iran and its proxies?
There's a tremendous amount of change that would need to happen to U.S. policy in the Middle East to fix things, I'm sad to say. One of the things the Biden administration campaigned on was rejoining the Iran nuclear deal, which effectively took Iran's supply of even medium-enriched uranium down to zero. Then for some reason they took office and decided they were wrong about that and they were going to get a better deal, and that's led us to where we are now. And the Iranians are spending good money. Every dollar that they spend helping the Houthis sap the U.S. missile supply and cause problems for the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea is a smart thing to do. So again, you want to ask yourself what costs you're willing to pay for what political outcomes and what likelihood your policies have of achieving those outcomes. And I think the results thus far have been absolutely dismal.
Justin Logan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
In the U.S., 72% of high school teachers said cell phone distraction is a major problem in the classroom. That's according to a report last week by the Pew Research Center. Educators in Los Angeles are taking action on this issue. By early next year, students in the nation's second largest school district will no longer be able to use cell phones during the school day. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the decision from the LA Unified School District.
The Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Education voted Tuesday to ban cell phone use during the school day. Board member Nick Malvoin, who pushed the bill, stated that students
they're surreptitiously scrolling in school, in class time. They have their head in their hands walking down the hallways. They're not talking to each other or playing at lunch or recess because they have their AirPods in.
The ban, which includes lunch and breaks, aims to improve students' interpersonal communication skills and reduce social media distress and cyberbullying.
It's crystallizing these deleterious effects, the harmful effects on students' academic achievement, on their mental health, on their physical health.
He noted that in other school districts with this policy, kids are happier, engage more with each other, and show improved academic performance. One teacher said that years ago, students having a cell phone in class wasn't as much of an issue as it is today.
This year, even with a very strict no cell phone policy in my classroom, it was an uphill battle. Managing student use of smartphones is now, as a classroom teacher, is now more like running a nonstop marathon.
However, many board members oppose the bill, arguing that cell phones are essential for safety.
Our cell phones also provide some comfort, as I can reach my son, or we can reach our children, and he can reach me during an emergency or when he needs me.
Another member stated that some kids will use their devices regardless.
The cell phone is going to exist anyway. And before you ban cell phone, what's going to be next? They're going to have it on their watch. They're going to have a watch that tells them the same stuff. And the same stuff you can do on the cell phone, you can do from your computer.
However, for some students, using cell phones is a necessity.
It's just that some of our newcomer students utilize phones for translation purposes. Obviously, a person is ideal, but sometimes in less common languages, there's a utilization of phones in class for that purpose.
Schools will be able to determine how to implement the phone ban, whether by requiring phones to be stored in lockers or pouches during the day. The resolution instructs staff to develop and present policies and a plan to the public before the board approves them within 120 days. The policy will go into effect as early as January 2025. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Public schools in Louisiana are now required to display the 10 Commandments in all classrooms. Governor Jeff Landry signed the bill into law today. The bill mandates a poster-sized display of the biblical scripture in, quote, large, easily readable font. It's required in all public schools from kindergartens to state-funded universities. The American Civil Liberties Union said it's preparing a lawsuit to challenge the bill, saying it violates the separation of church and state. But supporters say the measure isn't just about Christianity, but the 10 Commandments are also, quote, foundational documents of our state and national government. Under the law, all displays must be put up in classrooms by the beginning of 2025. Joining me now to discuss Russia's new deal with North Korea is Gerard Filitti, Middle East Affairs Analyst and Senior Counsel at the Lawfare Project. Gerard, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, to begin, what do you make of this Russia-North Korea deal, especially the timing given the ongoing war in Ukraine and tensions around the world?
What we can make of this is that Russia is now looking to solidify its relations wherever it can find them. It's making pacts and agreements with Syria, with Iran, with North Korea, with any country that's been providing it with support in its ongoing war of aggression with Ukraine. And at the same time, it's looking to foment more international discord and take pressure off of it by having these alliances with other countries. What we can make of this is that it's not unexpected. There have always been relationships that have been close between Russia and North Korea. This solidifies a relationship that already existed, but also brings in the prospect of perhaps embracing a larger war if either country decides that it is somehow the subject of aggression.
Expanding on that, why do you think Putin and Kim Jong-un are doing this? What does this signal to the rest of the world?
It signals to the rest of the world that Russia still needs to be taken seriously, that Russia still poses a threat militarily to the rest of the world, especially when it has alliances with countries like North Korea and Iran, which are more than willing to provide it with weapons, munitions, and manpower to continue fighting. What this signals is that Russia is not a defeated country or one that is on the decline. It signals that it is very much involved in global affairs, and it can still dictate the terms of international engagement through alliances.
Now, many know Russia is the one that started the war in Ukraine. So how do we read the part in this pact that says if either country is attacked? What does that mean? For instance, if Ukraine fires into Russia, is that considered an attack?
What's interesting about treaties today is that they're not worded the same way that they were 100 years ago when we had World War I and World War II, because treaties committed an obligated response. The treaty, we don't know the language yet, but what we have heard is that it refers to aggression, which is not well defined. So essentially, the countries have the option, the choice of enforcing this document and agreeing to provide military help or not, depending on the circumstances. So if Ukraine launches missiles into Russia, Russia might claim that there is an aggression that requires North Korean assistance, but North Korea might say that that's not an act of aggression that qualifies, that that's part of an ongoing war. So there's no guarantee, despite this treaty, that either country will come to the aid of the other in the case of an attack or a war.
Now, Putin is in Vietnam, seeking to further strengthen ties there. On the flip side, how likely are we to see growing partnerships between democratic allies?
Well, I think with democratic allies, it depends on the leadership of some countries like the United States, which has been a little bit missing in action when it comes to foreign policy and foreign trade. Unlike previous administrations that have been engaged in broadening trade deals and reciprocal trade arrangements with other countries, the Biden administration has not put that much of an emphasis. And in so doing, it's allowed countries like China to step into the void and develop their own relationships to the exclusion of the United States. However, there is very much an impetus on the part of European countries, the United States citizens, and Australia to develop stronger economic ties with the rest of the world. It's interesting to note that out of this trip, the one between Putin and North Vietnam is perhaps more important. Vietnam was one of the countries that provided lots of goods to the United States during the pandemic, stepping in for China when its markets were essentially closed because of COVID. And there was very much the opportunity for the United States and other countries to develop more trade with countries like Vietnam. This is why you see Putin going there. He doesn't want that closeness of relationship of economic ties between Vietnam and the West. So this is why he is prioritizing engagement there.
And Gerard, all of this does come as Russian ships leave Cuba after planned military drills there. Now, the U.S. officials say the flotilla posed no threat to the region. What about the optics here?
The optics are meant to show that Russia is unimpeded, that it can navigate within sight of the American coast, and that it still, just as is with its treaty with North Korea, can still be an active and dangerous player on the international scene. However, we have seen drills like this or military exercises like this for decades, especially during the Cold War, that never really posed a direct threat to the United States or to other countries. They were more meant to signal that Russia has a significant military that is capable of reaching the shores of the United States. That's something that's not lost on the American people. But again, with our armed forces, we are not really worried about the actual military threat posed by Russian ships close to America.
And given all of this, what should the U.S. and allies' response be in terms of deterrence?
America and its allies need to be vigilant about what the rest of the world is doing militarily, but it's also a cue that we need to strengthen our diplomatic relationships. We need to support our allies like Taiwan, like Israel, like Ukraine when it comes to disputes with other countries. Be sure that we are providing them with the help that they need, because if there is a global escalation, if there is, God forbid, another global crisis, we want to be sure that our allies stay with us just as we stay with them. So it's crucial to maintain the good ties and close relationships that America has historically had with its allies.
Gerard Fidelity, Middle East Affairs Analyst and Senior Counsel at the Lawfare Project. Thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure. Thank you.
The Senate and House are set for a showdown that will test Congress's ability to pass next year's defense budget on time. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
Senators are set to consider their version of the National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate's version of the defense bill totals at $923 billion. That blows past the 1% spending limit established by the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023 and goes over the president's budget request by $25 billion. It is actually Senate Republicans leading the push to breaking these spending limits.
I was disappointed by the president's budget request, but I hope to work with my colleagues on this subcommittee and on the Appropriations Committee to provide funding for additional space systems.
And I hope we can make bipartisan progress in this area at the full committee markup, and believe firmly that support of Senator Wicker's budget amendment will help us get CPOWER priorities back on track.
Senator Roger Wicker, the Republican from Mississippi, with the support of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, led the effort to increase defense spending.
China has gotten closer and closer to matching our military might. Failing to deter China would immediately trigger a global economic depression. Losing to Beijing would extend the hardship, darkening the course of the entire 21st century.
The Senate's version of the bill also allocates tens of billions of dollars more than the House's version, which has already been approved and with the support of 6 Democrats.
Let's all remember why we have these caps in the first place. House Republicans took the debt ceiling hostage and demanded funding caps and cuts in exchange for not destroying our nation's credit. These caps undermine our country's future in a really serious way.
Senate Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Senator Patty Murray has also indicated that any increase in defense spending must be met with an equal increase in non-defense spending. If this holds true, then all of the Senate appropriation bills will blow past the 1% spending cap established by the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023 and will also set the House and the Senate for a gridlock that will most likely last until after the general elections in November. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Former Chinese Communist Party officials are now working for a popular Chinese shopping app that's Temu's parent, PDD, a Chinese e-commerce giant.
A recent New York Post report found a bevy of former Chinese officials are taking senior positions at PDD. Posts range from the company's vice president to public relations executives. Chinese media revealed that between their salaries and company stock revenue, the new hires are taking home millions of dollars every year, with some positions even topping tens of millions of dollars. Data from 2023 shows that Temu has over 80 million active users in the U.S. The app calls the U.S. its largest market. But the Temu parents' close ties to the Chinese regime are causing concern. They've left many wondering, can Beijing access data on the app's U.S. users? Based on Chinese law, all companies in the country must hand over data whenever Chinese authorities ask for it. Temu has seen remarkable growth in the U.S. market since its U.S. launch 2 years ago. Its rapid expansion has even become a threat to American online shopping giants like Amazon.
Environmentalists in Britain sprayed Stonehenge with paint earlier today. Online video shows orange marks covering the prehistoric megaliths. Local police announced that 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of damaging the ancient monument. In a video released by the environmental group Just Stop Oil, 2 protesters were seen running towards Stonehenge's megaliths. They spray painted the stones as another person attempted to stop them. Just Stop Oil wants the British government to end the extraction and burning of oil, gas, and coal by 2030. The group has previously engaged in other disruptive environmental protests, including shutting down major roads and disrupting cultural and sporting events. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on today, but let's start in baseball, where Hall of Fame player Willie Mays passed away at the age of 93. What was he best known for?
You know, a lot of things. I mean, he was such a great two-way player. Now, as far as plays, he had that very memorable over-the-shoulder catch, you know, where his back was turned to the infield. This is back in Game 1 of the 1954 World Series. Let me explain this. You know, this is the 8th inning of a tie game. Runners on first and second, no outs. Cleveland's Vic Wertz hits the ball to really deep center field. Now, this is at the Polo Grounds, where center field was nearly 500 feet, easily the longest in the majors. Mays tracked the ball somehow over his shoulder the whole way, caught it at the warning track, and then immediately whirled and threw it back to the infield. Only one runner advanced. That play kept the game tied. His Giants would go on to win that game and the World Series. Now, he's not the only player to ever catch a ball like that, but to do it in such a pressure situation was incredible. Now, as far as his place among the all-time greats, I mean, he's mentioned right there with, you know, Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, all the best. But I thought what separated from him was his defense. He won 12 Gold Glove awards in center field, which is one of the toughest positions to play. Maybe the most complete player of all time.
Wow, well, moving to golf news, the PGA Tour has announced a new sponsor exemption exclusively for Tiger Woods to play in their premium events. Did they give a reason for why they're doing this?
Yeah, they said it was based on his, quote, exceptional lifetime achievement. You know, that's what the PGA Tour told its members in a memo on Tuesday night. You know, it's only for Tiger Woods, as you mentioned, but it's limited to 8 of their signature events. You know, the ones where they have more prize money, FedEx Cup points, and smaller fields. Now, otherwise, he wouldn't qualify because he's missed so many events ever since that car accident in 2021. Basically, he said he's only playing once a month right now because that's about all he can manage physically. So it's going to be tough. It would have been tough otherwise for him to get enough points to actually qualify here. And, you know, they obviously want him participating for a number of reasons. But probably number one is the fans and sponsors. I mean, he's still the biggest draw in the sport, no matter where he's ranked right now.
Looking at some sports news from your home state of Kansas, lawmakers there approved a plan to build new stadiums to lure both the Kansas City Chiefs and Royals across the state border to the Kansas side of Kansas City. Now, how close is this to becoming a reality?
You know, not very close yet, but at least it's getting interesting. You know, if the Kansas governor, Laura Kelly, signs the bill and the Chiefs and Royals agree to it, the quickest they could be there is 2031. That's when their current stadium leases expire. Kelly, though, hasn't said whether she'll sign it. She sounds like she will, and the Chiefs and Royals haven't said, you know, what their official response would be. But if she does, those two franchises suddenly have a lot of options and especially leverage in negotiating something on the Missouri side of Kansas City. Now, this all started a couple months ago when Missouri voters refused to support a sales tax that would have financed the upkeep of their two stadiums. But I would think if they did a revote on this same measure now in Missouri, it would get a lot more support, knowing they could possibly lose them to Kansas. I mean, there's quite a rivalry between these two states that really goes back to the Civil War when they were on opposite sides there. If the Royals and Chiefs, though, did move across the border to Kansas, Missouri would never hear the end of it, though.
Shifting gears to soccer, the Euro 2024 is underway with host country Germany already becoming the first team to advance to the knockout round. Is the format used here the same as the World Cup?
Yeah, it's very similar. You've got 24 teams in 6 groups. You play everyone in your group, and all the 6 first place and second place teams, as well as 4 third place teams, will advance to the knockout round, and then it's just single elimination after that. Now, as you mentioned, Germany already got themselves into the knockout round with a 2-0 win over Hungary today. Now, elsewhere in the tournament, Kylian Mbappe of France was at practice today doing some light training, despite a broken nose suffered Monday against Austria. Now, the team hasn't said whether he's going to play Friday. Obviously, his presence is going to largely determine how well France does in this tournament.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
A silver monolith was spotted in the desert near Las Vegas. Authorities don't know who built it or why, but it looks similar to ones that started appearing around the globe 4 years ago. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
Las Vegas Search and Rescue discovered the monolith north of the Las Vegas Valley over the weekend. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police posted some photos on social media saying, quote, "We see a lot of weird things when people go hiking, like not being prepared for the weather, not bringing enough water, but check this out." The monolith is a silver color made with a reflective material. It's unclear how tall it is at this time. In late 2020, similar-looking monoliths started appearing around the world, starting with one in a remote area of Utah that got international attention. A publicly available Google Doc has detailed a list of 17 monoliths found between November 18th and December 8th in 2020. Some locations include Joshua Tree, California, the Netherlands, Isle of Wight, and Western Germany. One even popped up downtown Las Vegas in the middle of the Fremont Street experience. And many of them vanished as quickly as they seemingly appeared. So far, not much else has been reported on the new monolith in Nevada. However, Las Vegas authorities seem to be expecting curious hikers to track down and visit the mysterious structure. Las Vegas police posted hiking safety tips along with the photos, including tell someone where you're going and when you plan to return, check the weather beforehand, bring enough water, food, and a first aid kit, and bring a light source. Jason Blair, NTD News.